Welcome, everyone, to the Boomer Briefing. I'm Gary Boomer, founder, strategist, and visionary at Boomer Consulting. And today I have as my guest Jeff Gramlich, who is the managing director and head of accounting at Validis. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Gary. Good to be here.
Well, it's great to have you. And as those of you that are subscribers to Boomer Briefing, you know, we try to take a topic that's hot in the profession and something that we can address in about 20 minutes and be as concise and direct as possible. And so that's our purpose today. Some of you may have tuned into a prior broadcast that Jeff and I did about the data-driven audit and also the impact of technology and AI on the audit. And we're going to focus now on something that's a little different, and that's the new accounting firm structure and really the mindset it takes to implement the new technology and manage change within your organization. So, Jeff, you might tell us a little bit about your background for those that maybe didn't hear the first session, so
Sure.
we know where you're coming from and what you're doing today.
100%. Thank you, Gary. So I joined Validis in 2017, so it's been about 6 years. I consulted with them for a year prior to that. I was president of Accountants World prior to that, and then I ran a business at Wolters Kluwer and then Thomson Reuters prior to that. So I obviously got my initial start at Arthur Young when it was Arthur Young, Gary. So a little bit of a date there. I am a shareholder and investor in Validis. I'm very passionate about our business and where we go, and I've been focused very intently on the Big Four and the largest accounting firms across the globe, and but I've spent a lot of time with the next group down and the mid firms and even some smaller firms. So I really like to talk about this topic and where we're going and where we see the profession and some of the insights that I've been given from others in the profession and from some of those firms.
You might give our audience just a quick overview of what we talked about in the data-driven audit and also the technology, so then they can relate to what we're going to talk about on the firm structure.
Sure. So in the data-driven audit, we're talking about a change process, and that is to bring in the data first before you do the audit, do some analysis on the audit, and then let that help drive some of your procedures within the audit. You know, the assertions don't necessarily change, but certainly the audit and identifying risk up front and where you go helps focus that. And that is monumentally different than the old way where we just got the data in and we started spreading it. In my world, our technology was a copy machine, and we got paper and we copied it and gave it back. That's why everybody in my age group is really good on a 10 key, and we could spread it really fast and accurately. But that's all changed now. You know, when we moved to kind of Lotus and then Excel, all we did was took the paper and put it in Lotus and then passed it on. But we didn't change anything. So the reason I invested in the vision that I've kind of saw and the opportunity that I saw, I guess, was this is really a paradigm shift to bring that data in, standardize that data, put it in an auditable format, and let the data go from there. And so what we're seeing now is firms that have been doing that for several years with us, and we're seeing other tool sets, Gary, driven around that want to automate all kinds of different processes. And that's why a fundamental mind shift needs to occur in how we manage the firm. So we've seen a ton of automation over my career in tax. And if you think about it just like that for a minute, Gary, in tax, why was tax always a little bit ahead in terms of technology than audit? Well, tax had a mandate. It's called the IRS in the U.S. and all the states. And so there was always some sort of mandate to do something different. You know, electronic filing, that became a mandate. You know, professionally prepared returns, that became a mandate to electronically file. You don't get to choose when your client has a data set that says, as an example, passive loss rules apply. You don't get to say, I want to opt out. No, you have to comply. So that's been driven by agencies that force that compliance. Practice management, we had to get our way around how we manage a practice and time and billing and get away from paper timesheets. I'm doing a little bit of a history here, but that automation proved out really quickly. And we have found in this profession that when short of a regulatory mandate, you can make an argument everything else is optional. And when it becomes optional, Gary, everybody loves, same as last year. They love Sally. I did a piece on it last year, and that mindset is changing in the more advanced firms, and we see that globally changing in the more advanced firms, but not near quick enough. And we don't change near as fast as professionals in other industries, whether that's the medical profession, in some cases even the attorneys outpaces, because they have a mandate to file things now electronically and do different things. But we need to catch up. And a part of that is what we're going to talk about with the fundamental mindset and the fundamental structure that we've got today is problematic.
Well, I like to summarize what you just said into three categories, and I call it business transformation. But in order for a business transform, and this is not just a CPA firm, this is the CPA firm client, there are three elements. One's mindset, skill sets, and tool sets. And we've seen the mandate come in the skill set area in the labor force and the demand. And I really thought we would see this earlier, uh, like in 2008
Right.
or 2010.
Right. Right.
But then outsourcing and other things have made those changes. So the part we're going to deal with in this segment is the mindset. And you might talk about what you're seeing in the firms, the decision-making process, the governance, how they're really going about that, because it was described to me a long time ago that partnership was probably the least uh, form of management that you wanted to have, because
Right.
everyone has an opinion, and sometimes the stronger the opinions, the less the amount of knowledge in that particular area. So I'd like your comments on that.
100%. So I'm going to approach this, Gary, from two things. One, from managing a business as CEO, and then I'm going to approach it from a vendor perspective. When we manage things as a CEO, we have obviously different skill sets, and I'm not going to belabor that, but we have sales, you have marketing, you have product development, you have support, and different groups and different functions, and then you have the executive team. But you typically have an annual budget cycle. Doesn't mean CPA firms don't; they absolutely do. But once you have a budget that's approved, you're working around a different set and a different process of assumptions. So let's say you have a budget approved for $1 million to spend on software, something interesting. This is going to blend into the vendor part of this really quick. When one of the executives over that group would come to me and say, we need to spend, $200,000 on this because that's what we talked about in our strategy session, our planning session, and that's why it's in the budget. And now we're at that month when it's time to pull the trigger, because not everything happens, in a calendar cycle. The conversation was, it usually involved around with the CFO in the room. Did you budget it? Yes, of course we did. And how are we doing against our numbers, both top line, meaning revenue, and expenses? Are we controlling that? And if those answers were yes, then the next answer was, okay, approved. Go ahead. There wasn't another committee meeting. There wasn't another let's get somebody else. There wasn't another discussion around, well, are we behind this or that, or do we really have to do it? And that was it. And in fact, when most things were budgeted, Gary, and you didn't spend it, you ended up in a situation where you couldn't necessarily recover quick enough because you needed that new tool set or that new thing, because you were counting on efficiencies to come out. So your whole planning was around it. I am going to get better at this because I bought this. So I'll give you a great example. We moved to a centralized expense report system across our division. It was budgeted. Everybody was going to pay for it, their portion of it. And when it became time to pull the trigger, we pulled the trigger because we were the CFO was tired of getting expense reports that were late, that were inaccurate, that had errors, all kinds of things, undocumented. We wanted to move to a centralized system, take a picture with your phone of the receipts, and move all that forward. So when it came time, we pulled the trigger. We didn't say, do we really need to spend it? we ask the other questions. How are we doing on top line? And we all knew that answer because we review it every month. We're doing fine. Did we budget for it? Yes, we did. Are we counting on the efficiency gain? Yes, we are. Move on. So that's the corporate structure, right? And that's the corporate mindset.
And that's a decision-making process.
That's a decision-making process. And so basically, when you're a vendor and a software company, you really think about when you set your strategy for the year and what you want to accomplish and how you want to grow the business, both top and bottom line. You think about it in several aspects, but in one area, you really think about, okay, what do we want to build? Because there's an opportunity that clients have helped us identify, or we've identified ourselves, or there's a new marketing, such as, in our case, ESG. What does that data set look like, as an example? So how do we start to evaluate that? Two, we then say, okay, do we need to build it, buy it, or partner with somebody? And as I said in the last segment, we continue to build out our ecosystem and partner it. And then three, when do we expect to start and do these? So that mindset around spending is completely different. So if you're now a CPA firm, we know we have traditional lines of service being audit, tax, consulting, and there's a whole lot in each of those categories, and there are subcategories in each one of them. How are we going to grow? Where are we going to grow? And what do we need to grow? And so the mindset, the decision process, once we have that set up in our planning session, which is what we should be doing in our planning session, right? And we set our strategy for the year, we don't change it. We don't change it. The only reason you would change as a vendor is if you missed an opportunity that came up, or you need to respond competitively that you just did not see during the year. The rest of the time, execute against the strategy, which means what? You're going to plan, and you're going to budget accordingly, and you're going to spend it accordingly. Because you can't just build good software necessarily, in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It takes longer than that to build something that has sustainable meaning over time. It just usually doesn't happen. The idea might happen that quick and some of the initial analysis, but the build of it always takes longer than that. And it always takes longer than you think. But the process, Gary, is what we're talking about, and the mindset.
And that's more the agile process
100%.
that is applicable to CPA firms. I think sometimes they think it's not applicable, but the things that we see here is, one, you have to have a shared vision. Two, you have to have a plan, and those plans can be overall firm plans or departmental plans, and probably involving all the partners in that is one of the big mistakes I see. They don't all need to be involved if there's proper communication, proper planning and budgeting. And then the third thing that's probably missing more than anything is the training on these tools. And a lot of people try to take the tool and apply their old processes. And that's an area that we're seeing: process management, project management, workflow management, document management, email management. These are all factors in the firm, and one tool doesn't necessarily meet all of the needs for the firm.
100%. And I think some of the firms, Gary, and we know who some of them are that have addressed this, but picture a firm, if you could, in your mind where you had a CEO. Now, we know firms that have a CEO, at least that they have that title, but picture in a firm, if you went beyond just that, and you said you had a head of sales for audit, a head of sales for tax, and a head of sales for consulting. And all those partners they're all CPAs, they're all certified, they're all experts in their own areas, but they're out selling. They're trying to sell to their current base, and they're trying to respond to requests for proposals, and they're trying to go after certain clients. But that's all they're going to do is sell. Then let's say you had delivery teams set up behind each one of those to actually deliver, and partners in charge of those groups. What would that look like? Okay, so now they're asking, and it's a different conversation. Well, I had budgeted this. Well, okay, great. We've got that planned. We've got this new one coming in, right? And I think I even learned from one of your conferences, this client satisfaction manager that overlooks all of the functions and makes sure that we're communicating, because we do parts parts or all of the audit. We do some of their tax work, and we do a lot of consulting for this client. And we need somebody to wrap all that together and make sure we're communicating backwards. So that client satisfaction manager, I thought, was an interesting title. We're also seeing skill sets that we had not seen before. Some have come up in the last 12 months. A prompt engineer. What the heck is a prompt engineer? You know what it is, and I know what it is, but it's somebody that just focuses on generative AI and how to ask the right questions and get better at asking and get more out of the AI things that we can do and need to do to get better at writing these things and to get better at enhancing our domain knowledge. We're seeing internal built and for the firm only AI centered products, I guess is the best way to think about it. But where they're building just their own for their firm and their staff can all attach it, and that's just the firm feeding it in, and it's just been fantastic. But what I'm seeing in more and more firms in the top 100, the bottom half of the top 100 and beyond, asking the question, do we really need to keep this partnership structure? And then the last thing, I think that this corporate structure can help adjust. And I know some firms have done this differently. Yes, the staff get paid overtime, but that takes extra hours and they get burnt out and they're tired of working that hard. So we some of that's not going to go away, but it could change the mindset, because you ask about mindset. If I feel like I have an equity position that I can get with some sort of phantom or some sort of stock structure within the firm, I may stay around longer. And if I know if I do a better job, that pot grows and my bonus at the end of the year can get bigger, or my say in the firm can get bigger. I can contribute in other ways, but I start to become an owner. Anytime you have a little bit of ownership and stake in the game, the mindset is completely different.
I see that as well. But I also see another trend is that the profession and some of the leading firms are getting much better at hiring people that are not CPAs and putting them in these positions. And I like to use the old target chart where you've got the circles in the targets starting on the
Right?
outside, and you
Right?
come in, and I can even relate to this. When I entered the profession, I had a master's degree and passed the CPA exam, but I still entered the zone of incompetency. And I think a lot of
We
people
all did.
it
We all did.
will relate to that. And then you become competent, and then you may want to specialize. And then all of us have unique abilities, and we like to use those unique abilities. About the time you become partner in a firm, the gravity changed from pulling you towards your unique abilities to pulling you back out into these areas. And it could be technology, HR, other things like that. So I like to say if we hire the right people and get them on the bus and they buy into the vision, that they can be much more professional and effective in these project management, data analytics, financial structure. And it takes a team today, not just CPAs, to run the firm. And I think if people are able to operate in their unique ability, they don't have burnout, and they continue to move to a higher level within the firm. So that's what you're really explaining is a career path for people to keep them engaged and allow them to grow professionally and personally, not just be
100%.
stuck in the same job for 15 years.
100%. And I'm hearing people use the term we're a learning organization focused on tax and accounting and consulting, and I think that's an interesting way to think about that. And I also think, Gary, it's interesting. When we would have a planning session in the corporate world, we'd ask the question, what can we change and what should we change? Right? Not what has to change. That's a
Right.
totally different set of questions. What can we change? What should we change? And can mean, okay, IT guys and the guys that have been doing some research out there, what's the art of the possible? And they would have a tremendous amount of input. Well, we're seeing this and this and this, AI being one of them. We can do some of this internally if we want to get comfortable first. Okay, then we'd ask the delivery guys, okay, in the support and product management, what should change? and they'd say, well, we see this opportunity in the market. We get a lot of questions on this, so we need to improve our products here. And that's an input. And sales obviously has a lot of input because they're with clients and they're seeing the art of the possible. And so we would build a plan around what can we change and what should we change, not what do we have to change. And CPA firms, they get really nervous in a hurry if the economy shows any kinds of signs of weakening or instability. And I get that because it can impact their fees and it can impact their client base 100%. But it shouldn't be so dramatic that we have to start laying people off, cutting things back, in order to what? Keep the partner salaries at an all-time high because we're the decision makers. That's not how a corporate structure works. That's not it. What can we change? What should we change? And in 1 year, that may be a lot of things because we did really well. And you always become the victim of your own success, right? You gotta grow based on what you did last year. So what can we afford to do and what should we do so that we maintain our competitive edge going forward?
Well, I would put this challenge to our leaders out there, not just the managing partners, but the departmental leaders, other leaders within the firm, and say this is really your responsibility. And with that, we're kind of out of time. And I'll ask you a last question here as we finish up. If you had a billboard out there, what would you put on that billboard to inspire both the profession and the clients?
I would say, I think I said it in 3 words last time. I'll even say it in 2 words now. I would say change now. And I don't mean that in a derogative way, but I would just say really try to look at what is possible, what can we do and should we do, not what we must do. And let's really think about that in our structure. Can we incent that 3rd or 4th year person that's really clicking to want to stay here for another 8 or 9 years because they're starting to show signs of a different skill set that we don't have, and they're helping us with that target, as you said.
Well, thanks, Jeff. Sorry we're out of time here, but to our audience, thank you for listening in. And if you enjoyed this, we release a new podcast every week. We encourage you to subscribe. Also encourage you to give us topics that you'd like to hear about in the future. And until the next time, stay well, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.